Daniela, and I work for the Italian Trade Agency in New York City. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. We're thrilled to be back with Tales, even though we're not in the humidity in New Orleans. We're really happy to be live with you here this morning. And then we're super excited to be here with two amazing industry experts, Livio and Armando, and my colleague Paola. And before I tell you a little bit about us, tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from. We would love to get to know you in typical Italian fashion. So the Italian Trade Agency is a government agency, and the Food and Wine Department is based in New York City, and we handle all of the United States for the promotion of Italian food, wine, and spirits. We focus on increasing the awareness of Italian spirits all over, which range from distillates to fortified wines, liqueurs, and cordials. And this online educational seminar is part of a larger spirits promotion project that started back in 2018. We've been doing a lot of events since then, and we've seen a huge rising popularity in mixology and the use of Italian spirits behind the bar. So we only figured it would be best to, represent Italian spirits at Tales of the Cocktail, being one of the best events in the industry. Our hashtag for this project are hashtag Drink Italian and hashtag Italian Spirits. And we also have a very fun and humble website, italianspirits.us, that has a lot more information about all the amazing categories of spirits that Italy has to offer. And you can obviously reach us via email at newyork.ice.it if you have any specific questions. You have a chat and a Q&A on the right side of your screen. Feel free to ask any questions. We always love to keep these sessions very interactive and not just like a monologue coming from us. This is going to be a conversation between all of us, and we hope that you enjoy this presentation. And with that being said, I'll leave it to one of the man of the hour, Livio Lauro.
Well, good morning, everybody. Hello. So I'm going to just make a brief introduction. My name is Livio Lauro, and I grew up in southern Italy on a really neat island called Ischia in the Gulf of Naples in the Amalfi Coast. It's a highly touristic island, which allowed me to meet a bunch of people from all different walks of life. For many years there, I worked on both sides of the bar, being the bartender and being the client, serving in coffee shops, hotels, and so much more. And in 2000, I moved here to Las Vegas, where I've been also doing similar work. I'm really happy about today, and I'm excited that I get to do one of these seminars with a dear colleague, somebody actually from my own town, a fine gentleman by the name of Armando. And with no further ado, Armando, the floor is yours, my man.
Well, good morning, buongiorno to everybody. Hopefully everybody is good out there at wherever you may be. My name is Armando Bisceglia. I am the owner, chef, and pretty much everything in this little small place behind me called Bacco, Vino, Contorni, in the heart of the Italian section of Providence's Federal Hill. I, like Livio, was born and raised in Italy. I moved to the States when I was 10. I got into the hospitality industry very quickly. I was 12, my first job in a restaurant. I've been doing it ever since, on, off, eventually. About 12 years ago, I started doing it full time, and that's where it brings me now. But I get the opportunity to go back to Italy. I do plenty of work out there, whether it is towards towards the wine industry, the food industry, and also the travel and leisure industry. So I'm looking forward to this afternoon, to this morning. I'm going to pass it along to the next, but any questions you have, please feel free to put it in that box. We'd love to answer it. Okay, go for it.
So my name is Paola Pavan. I work for the Italian Trade Commission, and I will try to be the moderator between these two people. We actually had probably 3-hour brainstorming, really Italian style. We couldn't stop. So right now we try to focus and, give in these 30 minutes, everything that is not everything, but the most important thing that we would like to transmit about the Italian hospitality and, what is Italy and what is US, what we can, exchange in this conversation. So before we talk about the topic, the Italian hospitality, I want to dig a little deeper inside the experience of these two panelists, because they actually saw both of the both of the countries. So Livio, you work like a spirits expert, you work in hospitality here in Italy. What was your experience in Italy, and what do you see are the similarities and the differences between, the bar experience in Italy and in the US?
Well, so thank you, by the way, Paula. The experience, the guest experience is the same, right? Every guest shows up and wants to feel important, wants their needs to be fulfilled. They walk in with an expectation, and the establishment's job is to protect that expectation, because sometimes it steers away and then they get upset or they're unhappy. My experience, of course, in Italy, I worked the decadent happy hour. I worked in a very cocktail centric lounge called Valentino. And at Valentino, what was very nice about it is we opened very late. So between 10 p.m. and 1 in the morning, we were your typical lounge with the piano and your refined customer. And then we would literally have a change at 1 a.m. The older crowd would leave, the younger crowd would come in, and we would become DJ-centric, and we were pouring shots. And then along with that, I worked in other establishments where I was able to do the afternoon happy hour, the espresso, all those things. And so it was really, really privileged. And then when I moved to Las Vegas, it's very different here, right? Because here we have big casinos, big hotels, restaurants that are owned by corporations. And I really was able to understand the difference in business philosophy between the two. And what I will tell you is that the Italians have an incredible adoration for how America is organized. And I do know as a fact that Americans have an incredible adoration for the warm hospitality that the Italians know how to offer. What everybody on this, and of course we could have a healthy conversation about it, which is the cool part of today. But in order to really implement some of Italy's hospitality techniques, you have to almost throw away the American rule book in many ways. And we will talk about that a lot more, but some of the things that I might be saying or Armando might be saying, might have 9 billion books on hospitality that completely contradict it and say, no, what these guys are saying is wrong. These are two knuckleheads. So stay tuned. It's going to be fun, and I look forward to it.
Yeah, and yes, Armando actually has, right now he's the chef, he's the owner, but before he was a general manager in many other restaurants. So for him, he can explain a little more also these similarities and differences also in running the business and in running the staff.
Well, I think it's a very interesting discussion, because I go back to the first restaurant that I ran here in the States. It was actually a chain of Italian restaurants out of Naples called Rosso Pomodoro, and they were transferring what was back then the Italian style of hospitality to the American style of hospitality. And I'll tell you something, they got it all wrong at the beginning, because they had an understanding of what they were doing over there that here is completely different, which is very important to what I do here, because I adapted a lot of the Italian structure to our Italian restaurant. But the most important part about it was I had to Americanize it, and that was very important. The Americanization of the hospitality industry from Italy to America changes, and there's a lot of dynamics that are very kind of, and I know we're going to get into these dynamics as we go, but that's really been my important part of what I do here. How do I bring that Italian, in my case, Napolitudine, because I grew up and born and raised in Naples. How do I bring that into the restaurant without offending, misunderstanding, maybe bringing the customer to think something that they really isn't? And that's a very difficult way to go about it. And there's structural ways to do it, and there's educational ways to do it. Now, I've done it. I can do it here much easier in a restaurant where there's 3 people working. But I maintained a restaurant where I had 20 staff members, whether they were in the kitchen, on the floor, at the bar, all over the place. that we were able to train and explain and educate. And that's a very important thing. So these are some of the things that we're going to get in through as as the next 20 minutes go on. So.
Yes, and feel free to send us questions. I don't want to go on and asking questions to the guys, even if it's going to be very interesting. One thing that Armando was saying, is not just the relationship between the staff and the staff training, but also the person itself. This is something that we are going to develop this idea, this concept of the person, like the bartender or the waiter, as an individual, as a professional, what he can, who is he and what he can bring on the table in the whole experience. So Livio, for example, talking about the bartender, what do you think are, some of the good skills and tips, and what great bartenders should do?
Mm-hmm. So I actually have even an extended webinar about this afternoon, which will even take it a little step further. But understanding one thing, Italian cocktails are very simple. Italian bartenders, on the other hand, are very refined. And I believe it really all starts, and like you said, Paula, it starts outside of the establishment, not inside. Italians in general, and like I said, this is sounds negative, right? To the usual way we know how to do business. But Italians in general are inconspicuously curious people, nosy people, and very judgmental. And that sounds terrible. Like, I don't want to be judged by you. Like, what are you looking at? All of that stuff. But it's actually when it's applied consistently by the Italian bartender, what it does is it creates an incredible skill that allows the bartender to really tune in on what the guests' needs are and be able to engage in a very meaningful way. And it can be as easy as, this person's watch is very nice, they like watches. Or it can be anything. And it's hard to bring up examples because every person that is in front of you at the bar that just walks in as a guest, whether they're at the table or at the bar counter, has a different cue. Italian bartenders have an impeccable way of picking up that cue, and it all starts from very, very nosy, judgmental. Then they use their power of observation, of course, to tune into the interests of that person. In Italy, we were always taught to start in a hotel bar because the conversation portion of dealing with a customer for many people in life comes with maturity. It's hard to be 22 years old and speak to a 55-year-old man who's well-traveled and really be able to engage because those life experiences are not the same. Some of the opinions are not the same. So it's really hard to find that engagement point. So I always say, whatever it is in America that will allow you to have a more traveled international crowd, that is the first place I recommend you go because you can become a lot more well-rounded. And I'll finish it with this because, of course, I don't want to take over the whole webinar. But in Italy, when I studied bartending through the IBIS, the Italian Bartenders Association, one of the exam questions, actually multiple exam questions, were about everyday things. What's happening in the world? We had questions which were along the lines of, where are the comics in the newspaper? Because if you know how to read your guest's body language, and if you really are nosy and tune in, and you know that they're into something humorous, this was back at the time where every bar top had a newspaper on it, right? It would be nice to know that the comics come after sports, and that you would slip your hand and you would open the comic page and put it in front of them. If instead, on the other hand, you have some uptight person that's really and you know that their topic is business, right? You know that you would open the business page and give it to them. Tuning into their radio station is what we like to call it.
So Armando, you are going to talk about, making an experience, and another concept of this seminar is actually like making a real experience for the guests. But before we go into that, I want to stay a little more on the staff side. Like Livio was talking about the bartender, but you, in the management, you were managing the waiter, the bartender, the people in the kitchen, and how can you make a team like a kind of Italian style team? How can you transmit the culture?
Well, I want to start by saying what Livio made a very good point, and I think that runs for pretty much anything that is Italian involved. Everything, even the food, on a food aspect of something, Italian food is very simple, but it needs to be culturally explained, and that's the big issue. That's what we do. That's what I do here, because I've in my mind, I've built consistency on one main ingredient, and that's tradition. And that's very important. How do you build that tradition from a perspective of food and management and all those kind of things? And I always believe that you have to go back to maybe one or two very important things. You have to have that basis of an idea, which is, if and I use Italian for anybody. It could be an Asian restaurant, it could be a French restaurant, but you have to hold that main importance of tradition, and then you have to explain to yourself, what is tradition to you? In my case, tradition to me is not to have the usual chicken parm, fried calamari, spaghetti and meatballs. I've removed the American out of Italian American, and I've made it traditional. If you feel that that's your tradition, if your grandmother did that, then you're a chicken parm place. No one is telling you you can or you can't or you shouldn't. The important part is, how do you take the educational purpose, which is to tell your staff you start with the bartender, when they're sitting there and people say, well, what should I have to eat? Well, then you have to jump in and say, okay, well, folks, the most important part of our job is to come across to the person sitting on the other side as knowledgeable, as understanding, as respecting, but at the same time, allowing yourself to say to that person, what I tell you is what you're going to do. And that's not necessarily mean I'm going to take over the conversation. It basically means that person who's sitting there is asking me what I need to do. And if you train a 21-year-old or a 34-year-old or a 50-year-old how to do that, it's going to come across. It's just a matter of how you educate that person. It's not easy. It's not easy. And I can tell you from experience, the food part is much, much easier. You take the wine part of it on the Italian planet or in the Italian restaurant, that becomes mostly, unexplainable. And in a bigger place, I had to be that guy to go to the table and talk wine, because no 20-year-old, 30-year-old is going to think about the 70 wines, 80 wines that you may have on a list and verbatim know what I know. And you can't explain it. So you just give them, the quick bullet points, and always have somebody like me, like Livio, that if nobody knows, they say, well, let me get Livio for you. I'll be more than happy to, to kind of put it all together for you.
Yeah, that's great. I think, we are digging into the direction of what we were saying. The customer is the protagonist, but, what's around him is what's happening around him, and how we can kind of guide him, take him out from that overwhelming choice that they need to, when they look at the menu and they see that everything more or less, they don't know what to choose. That's something that, you can do it if you gain their trust and if you show that, what you're talking about, like Armando was saying. So, Livia, for example, how would you suggest a drink to a person in a bar, talking from the aperitivo and the digestivo and the whole Italian experience?
Yeah.
Guys, before that, sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but there is a question that I think is pertinent to what we're talking right now. So let's maybe take that. It's anonymous, but it says, how much of genuine hospitality do you think can be learned or taught versus inherent in someone's personality or character?
Oh, what a beautiful question. It's a good 50-50 in my opinion. And I also see Andrew Faudry has a really good question as well. Thanks for your questions, by the way. We do appreciate that. I think it's a good 50-50. Here's the rule, right? And I will make it as quick as possible because I do want to answer as many questions as possible. But in the hiring process, I really do think you need to look for somebody that's nosy, because nosy and curious means I want to learn. I don't mind my own business. I want to know what you're doing there because I want to do it too. And so a lot of it is that. The other part of that, and yes, please go ahead and misquote me and say that I just said this, is also how you train the staff. Every establishment that I ever got hired in when I moved to America had a book this thick that told me everything that I had to do, from how I dressed to how I checked in, how I clocked out, how I spoke, what I said, what were the catch lines, how to end my emails. In Italy, that training is a lot like, hey, your first day of work is Friday, see you then. That's your training. And so when you treat a person like an adult, what you get back is an adult. When you treat a person like a programmable kid, what you get back is a programmable kid. Wonderful question. Thank you for asking.
Livio, I was just going to jump on that. I honestly think I think we're in the middle somewhere, but I honestly think the best hospitality is inherited. If you just know it, you can't buy what I know. And I don't mean that to be cocky, or some of us just have it and some of us don't. And the ones that have it, and I speak for, and Paula has known me for years, she can tell you this, but for us, this isn't work. You don't go to work on a day-to-day basis. To you, this is a game. To me, I play this like it's a chess game. I come in here and I don't work. It exudes. Like when you have somebody that comes to the table and says to you, folks, tonight you're eating what I tell you to eat. It's not out of respect. It's because I know what I'm doing. It genuinely bleeds through you. And sometimes in this industry, and this is where we want to go back to when we were talking about Naples for a minute, Italy, especially us Neapolitans who tend to understand hospitality from a bigger perspective, because I feel us Southern Italians have this like, hey, boisterous kind of, personality. But when you go to Italy and you're dealing with service is service. It's this. It's created to be a profession. Here we have servers because you're out of college, you're getting, you need an in-between job, or, if you're out in LA or Las Vegas, you're working as an actress or an actor. But in Italy, service is done in a different manner. And it's for only those that can actually do it. So that, I think, is a very great question. I don't know if you can teach people how to be hospitable. I think you can inherit it from wherever it comes, but I don't know if you can really teach it.
Just to add to that too, real quick, really, really, really good point, Armando. The concept of, hey, you're eating what I'm telling you to eat today it's to be understood that if you come to my house, I only make one meal, right? I don't have 93 entrees to give you. I make you this wonderful bowl of pasta and the ingredients come from the garden. And therefore, when I give you hospitability in my restaurant, despite the fact that there's 93 options, I am treating you like you're at my house. I made this for you. You have to try it. You got to have it. And that's the mindset. And of course, it needs to be sold in a way where the customer doesn't look at you and say, well, I came here for this. Who are you to tell me what I want? Let me go on Yelp and tell you what I think about your service. So there's all that. Paula had a question on the table that she asked me. Do you want me to answer, or do you want to keep on going with
I think we can go on with this concept, because we kind of jump on another concept, that is the fact to turn a customer to a loyal fan, but more than a loyal fan, I would say like a friend. Like right now we are talking about welcoming people to our home, and in any aspect of the Italian hospitality, you are in a pizzeria or you are in a 3-star Michelin, you feel like you are at home. there's an attention to the customer, and and you try to gain trust. What I think that is related to what Armando was saying is basically you cannot learn too much. You kind of need to have a talent for it, but then you can refine it, like Livia was saying at the beginning. So the more you practice, the more you get tuned to the customer. So getting again a little more into the customers, in Italy we have a practice that is a kind of a lost lead. We offer something to gain this trust. So Livio, let us know a little more about this, and then maybe Armando can explain how to transform these lost leads in a profit in the future.
Very good. Yeah. And thank you for that, Paula. And before I say that, I want to get this out because I think it's important. One of the other biggest conflicts of opinions that I've heard between the Italian hospitality and the American hospitality is that in America, again, because we're all part of this big ecosystem and we get the big book and we all have to operate in a specific way, that consistency is the key to success. And it's all about consistency, and you have to be consistent. In Italy, we were taught, especially at Valentino, where I made martinis all night, I was taught, Livio, if you make everybody the exact same martini, 7 out of 10 will come back. It's not about consistency. It's about tuning in to the type of product that your guest wants. Somebody might want a daiquiri that's more sour than the other person that wants a balanced daiquiri, who might be sitting next to another person who wants a daiquiri that's overly sweet. So consistency is not the thing. It's understanding the guest needs that is the thing. Thanks for letting me rant on that for a second. As far as the lost leader goes, in southern Italy, all over Italy, but in southern Italy mostly because that's where I lived most of my Italian life from Rome down. At the end of the meal, one of two things typically happens. Either a round of the local liqueur is put down on the table, and it could be made in the kitchen or it could be made down the street, but it's always local. They're giving you a piece of their la terra. They're giving you a piece of their geography, and it's free. Other times, if you are more of a local, and they will actually put a bottle on the table. They'll put a bottle on the table. They have 93 bottles of limoncello in the freezer. At the end of the dinner, they throw the bottle of limoncello. Now, they can do a couple of things. We used to do it in different ways. Some people, it's completely a lost leader, 100%. And it's, everybody's going to take a shot. So at the end, there's 12 ounces missing, whatever that would equate to. And but that is going to be a super fan customer that is going to come back because you gave them a piece of you and you brag about it. And bragging, social media wouldn't exist if we weren't all braggers. So it gives me a bragging point to say, I know Armando at Bacco and he takes care of me and he hooks me up and I'm a super fan. And you can't show me a picture of Armando making bad food. I wouldn't believe it with my eyes. I'm that much of a fan. And so there's that part of it. In other cases, for instance, and I'll just answer this for the financial part of it that we used to do, is if you had the table that were big drinkers, you would just put a little line with the pen on where the level of the limoncello was, right? And at the end of the meal, if there were 5, 6, 7 shots missing, that's okay. We lose it. If they drank the whole bottle, you charged them for 2. And now you don't let them feel like they took advantage of you, thus they don't come back anymore because they're like, oh, we really hosed Armando last time. So it really is cater the drink to that person, and don't be afraid to spend a few bucks. Argue with your bean counter when they're telling you that a lost sale is going to take the restaurant and put it belly up. And that's my rant.
I want to go back and just kick this back into Gria because I do think that giving that limoncello is great, but in my case, I think terminology of words and how you bring things about is very important. One of my biggest lines in this industry, I've had it for years, is, and especially with wine or food, folks, you know what? If you don't like it, I'll be more than happy to drink it. I'll be more than happy to eat it. And that's the part we haven't discussed here. How do we make the customer feel more at ease? Because if I go to a restaurant and I don't know what the hell to eat and I'm looking at a list, I'm like freaking out. I find the opportunity to kind of get into that person's head and say, sir, ma'am, what do you like? What do you want to try? These are our popular dishes. This is what we do. So again, I think that lost leader happens, and it always will happen. But I think it's also important to discuss the back end of that, which is to make these people loyal fans without necessarily giving that lost leader, because I think you can do that. And you can do that by giving great, making people laugh, making people really relax. This is why the word experience is important in all these parts of our business, our industry. And we do something here called the Armando experience, which is basically you come to the table, you don't even order. As long as you just tell me your allergies or what you don't like, but we feed you based on what I think you should eat. And that's key. That's important. That brings everybody together. It brings an opportunity. And when people come back, they know that when they're coming here, they're going to have a dinner, and they're going to get knocked off their feet, and they're going to eat something that maybe they weren't used to, but that's what brings them back. So you have to generate some sort of positivity of making your staff understand that they have to have something in them, to sell, to push, to get something, that really excites them.
Okay, Danny, is there any question, or we wrap up?
There's just a lot that I don't think we can all cover them, sadly. But actually, I think this is a good one. Andrew asked, does anyone on the panel think that American hospitality inherently misses the hotel bar aspect of guest relationship?
Yes, I miss it dearly. Because, if you wanted a really cool that same experience here, you might get in a very nice lounge, a very unique cocktail bar. But in the two things that I miss from Italy is the ability to walk in any hotel and have that kit glove bar experience. And number two, having a great espresso at a gas station.
Yeah. And maybe one last question that I have for Armando. Do you think an extensive wine list could potentially be an overkill and intimidate the guests?
Absolutely. I think a ridiculous, 15 to 20 wines is perfect. And again, they don't have to know the wines. You need to generate wines that will make them comfortable, and you got to teach it to them. And that's what we've had. We started out with a list of 40. We're down to 20 wines. And really, we don't even give them a wine list. I tell them what to drink. It's that simple. I think shrinking it brings them and makes them more comfortable. The idea is make them feel more comfortable, more at home, and that'll generate the opportunity to want to come back and to generate more money in your pocket.
Okay, last thoughts. Livio, for the professional, what do you suggest? What is your tip, advice?
I recommend you you do two things. For the professional, meaning somebody that is cutting their teeth, obviously, and trying to learn the ropes or improve. Have multiple mentors. You should always have I believe that you should have two mentors, and they should somewhat contradict each other in terms of, not necessarily contradict each other, but they should have two very different philosophies. And so you should learn from the quick and the practical, because quick and practical is indeed a thing. And you should learn from the refined and elegant. And these two mentors, you should pick from at least those two, right? The things you like, and then add your own experience in it. Variety is very important in where you learn to work. So starting as a barback is extremely important. And having a barback job where you get to learn everything from the ground up versus having maybe your second job be already a bartending job in a place where it's a little more, bartending is a little easier. It allows you that variety. And if, I think it was Mario Andretti that said, if everything is under control, you're going too slow. You need to create an ecosystem that makes sure that you're under control, but just a little above your comfort zone. Two mentors that play tug of war, so that you have to observe and keep your eyes open. And maybe even two different jobs. Again, one of them where you're learning from the ground up, and one of them where you're just being thrown in Italian style. It's Friday night, the place is pumping. good luck. That's my well-rounded training program.
Armando, your last thoughts.
My last thoughts are very simple. We're in an industry that goes 24/7. Have the most important thing I can tell you is have a hobby. Figure out a way to disconnect yourself from this for 1, 2 days a week, 1 day a week. Make sure that you rest, you relax, you do what you have to do. And most importantly, if we're talking about the Italian, take that a couple of days every year, go to Italy, go north, see what Trento Alto Adige has. Go to Tuscany, go to Verona, go to Rome, go to Naples, go to Sicily, Sardinia. See Italy for what it is, because if you're trying to mimic something, you can't mimic something if you've never seen it. So definitely rest up, and in the time that you're resting, go to Italy and go rest in Italy, and that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, great. And so, we hope that you are going to travel to Italy, even if you don't work in an Italian restaurant. One thing that you can do also is experience Italy throughout our product and our spirits. Make sure you have a look at the label that says it's made in Italy. There's, we are, we have a great tradition, but, some of the same product that we produce in Italy, they can come from different countries in the world. So, make sure you understand the differences between all the products. And, I hope you enjoy being in our home and having this experience. And Dani, if you can finish and you...
Yeah, well, I see that Pulcinella says hi with Armando over there. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. This will be recorded and it will still be on demand later throughout Tales. So feel free to rewatch, or if you have any questions, I left my email in the chat. And you can just shoot me an email and I can get back to you. I can talk to Livia and Armando about them. But we appreciate you taking the time, and don't forget to drink Italian.
Don't forget to sign up for the other events that we have. We have other 3 seminars with Livio, with the products, talking about cocktails and everything. So those are going to be more like mixology and more like hands-on. So thank you very much. And we had a lot of fun.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.